Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to some more Astral Chain, and today's video is going to be a very special one. We're going to be talking about the Aether Superboss, the most powerful enemy in the game. Very frustrating, especially if you don't have a game plan, but because of the way they've done all of his cases, the way that you can only fight this particular boss after beating all the other ones, by now everyone should have the tools they need in order to come out the victor. This particular boss is very tricky to fight, but the whole point of today's video is that I'm going to give you guys a demonstration of how I fight him. I'll be briefly sharing my builds. I just want to make sure that you guys know why I equipped the certain things that I did on my legions before we get into the fight, which has a pretty decent strategy around it. It's fairly reliable, it's fairly excitingly paced as the fight tends to be, and I hope that you guys will find some very good use of it and then get yourself all of the S rank on the all of cases. So quickly looking over at my legions, as you can see over here, I'm going to be using all 5 of my legions. I think the first time I beat the Superboss, I only needed to use Arrow, Axe, and Beast, but let's face it, you're going to need all the help that you can get, and that's exactly what I'm trying to do here. So if you look over at Arrow, Sword, and Arms active skills, they're going to be exactly the same. Power Charge is incredibly important. You need as much damage as you can get through your abilities, and if you use this in combination with your drinks, then you're going to chunk the HP just a little bit better. You'll find that this fight can drag on for a little bit if you don't have the proper skills, but Power Charge helps kind of close that gap. And I've also given them both Hit Rush. Hit Rush, insanely useful for pretty much any situation. It's extra damage. If the Legion gets hit because of some mispositioning, it does not affect you when Platinum Ultimate difficulty. And the best part about it is that it serves as a distraction. And this is insanely important for the fight that we're going to have because it's more important than ever. And the reason why is because if this guy is focusing down the Arrow Legion that's doing the Hit Rush, that means you can get those extra hits in, which makes the difference between you winning and you losing. And honestly, you're going to lose a lot for this fight, especially if you're just starting out. Thing is though, is that I've given them all Hit Rush and Power Charge. I mostly use Hit Rush just so I can go for my approach, so that I can make sure that things are safe if I want to engage the enemy, and I use Power Charge for what I'm about to start getting into a big combo. And let's look over at Axe and Beast, my 2 favorite legions in the entire game. Axe, I've given him the blue shield, in my opinion, the most useful move in the game, just because it lets you have added safety, it lets you trade blows if you need be, or it just lets you be safe from any of his giant attacks. He has some insanely dangerous abilities, the Superboss, and you want to make sure you can at least survive a couple of hits so you can quickly get onto Beast and escape. I've also given him the auto binds. Now the funny thing about the Superboss is that even from the get-go, if you chain bind this guy, he will not be stunned. This doesn't seem like a very useful thing to know, but if you do your follow-ups with the Axe Legion, it's really powerful and potent for kind of building up that stun, which is going to be the focal point for the first phase, and it's a very useful damage tool overall for those follow-ups. Next up is going to be Beast. Beast, fantastic guy overall. I've given him the Speed Star, just a little bit of a bonus if I want to do this right before a combo, and it'll be very important for the final phase of this fight when I start going and talking about the Legion Fusion. But Speed Star, very good buff overall. And then there's Howl, in my mind, the second best ability in the entire game, and unlike Chain Binds, it does not matter how many times you've hit someone with a Howl, this will stun them for any amount of time, and it's almost necessary. No, not almost, absolutely necessary if you want to beat against this Superboss. Howl's really good for just getting that stun, letting you kind of set up your big damage combos, and it's very good for kind of getting that sequence going so you can keep them locked in their stun. So I think that pretty much about does it. Let's quickly look over at the abilities of my legions. I'm very particular about what I picked, but this is pretty simple stuff and it's worked for me. I've killed this particular Superboss at least about 10 times, I think, at the time of recording. And so far the strategy has worked, so please bear with me. So the first thing I want to point out is that the Arrow Legion, Sword Legion, and Arm Legion will have the exact same abilities. They're going to have the quick cooldown, as much cooldown as possible, even though Hit Rush and Power Charge are all very similar to each other in terms of cooldowns. I just want to make sure that I can have it out reliably. Nothing's worse than finding a good moment and not having your skills available. It's extremely vital that you have this, so that's exactly what I've done here. As much cooldown as possible, and again, because they're hit rushing, all the slows that I've applied to my Axe and Beast Legion will apply to these guys too, so you will be fighting a good amount of slows, kind of get a good chain going. And then of course there's going to be the Axe Legion. This is basically the same build that I've always used. I've given him the quick cooldown again because just having quick cooldowns for the blue shield will give me a little bit more safety so that I'm not always having to stall around on beast mode. But otherwise though, having Super Armor Omega can be useful too if you think you can trade a hit, if you think you can just have just the right amount of time to get that last hit in to trigger the stun, then that might be worth it. Otherwise though, you don't want to trade hits too much with the boss because he could one-shot you out of nowhere if you're not careful. And of course I've given him the slow attack 10%, which of course is a must-have for anyone that's trying to get your combos off as soon as possible. And then finally there's Beast. Again, nothing special here, nothing special at all, just 60% of slow attack. Most of the time Beast won't be attacking, but his throw attack, or his fling, is very useful because of how much it hits. But then also if you have this in conjunction with a hit rush and you're just trying to dodge, kind of scope him out while you're riding around and avoiding all the attacks, then these can really proc reliably, and that's what makes it so good. Once you see a slow, you can send him in, give him a howl, and then you can start getting your offense going. That pretty much is all I could really say about this. The other thing I want to mention is that if you are playing and hoping to fight this super boss, I highly recommend maxing out your Legatus and your X-Baton. X-Baton, obviously, it should be pretty obvious why. You want to do as much damage as possible, because the longer this guy stays alive, the more likely he is going to destroy you. But I want to really point out the Legatus. I actually didn't max it out the first time I beat it, but I felt like I won by the skin of my teeth, and the reason why is because I found myself starved for energy. The difference between the max level and the second most highest rank for the Legatus is huge. There will be times where you'll always reliably have all the energy you need, and that's extremely important. If you have no energy, you're probably going to die against the Aether boss because he's so good at punching stuff like that. But I think that's pretty much all there is that I could say about this. There's really so much more that I could tell you about the fight, but I'd rather just let the demonstration handle that for you guys. So that's exactly what we're going to do right now. Let's check it out. Alrighty, so this is a pretty interesting take compared to what we usually do. This time, I'm going to be doing a recording of the commentary while not playing, so I can kind of focus on what's going down. At the beginning of every run, every time, I always use the Reso Max to make sure the meter is full, never have to think about it ever again. And now we gotta get ourselves ready for this guy. I always start things off with the Arrow Legion and just have the Spicy Crobas available in the item slot. So the moment this battle begins, you want to start things off with an auto rush, or the hit rush, and then switch over to Beast, see if you can proc that slow. And this whole vortex attack that he does, it's pretty easy to avoid, and honestly this is probably the best start anyways, just because you will be needing to go on Beast anyways. The other thing too is that he kind of has a tendency to also start off with lightning strikes. Honestly, that's just bad luck. Still stay on Beast anyways. Say that goes for the fireballs, get onto Beast, make sure you can get behind him and start attacking. So the moment you have this guy stunned, put on all your buffs, your Speed Star, your Power Charge, your Spicy Cobra, and then activate the hit rush and then move. The name of the game here is to keep the stun going for as long as possible, and when you have the hit rush, you will have more chances of proccing not just stun, but also the slow. You see me doing the auto bind here, but that's because the auto bind does a great amount of stun damage to any of your targets, which is insanely useful. And then whenever I see no hit rushes happening, switch over to your next hit rusher, do the power charge, go hit rush, then switch back to axe and continue laying down the hurt. You're going to want to aim to get his health bar to just a little bit under 50%. This is by far the easiest part of the entire fight. Actually a fairly easy fight overall, just to make up for the fact that the second phase is just absolutely difficult. The moment you see an attack appear under you, don't take any risks, go for Beast. You shouldn't be getting hit for this particular fight. They give you plenty of healing items, but you shouldn't really need them most of the time because most of its attacks can one-shot you. He does have an attack where he multiplies himself. When that happens, you might get lucky. Axe Legion is very explodey, so that could work too. But otherwise though, just use a grenade. Alright, so here is where things get tricky. The whole focal point for this particular fight is to try to go fish for the Howl Stun. Once you hit him with the Howl Stun or the slow, Sorry, you want to follow up a slow with a howl just so you can start opening up with all of your buffs and your attacks. This is definitely going to require a bit of patience, but to be honest though, don't worry too much, there's no rush, just make sure you have all of your abilities ready. Okay, so here's that infamous flurry attack. This is by far the most deadly attack in the game. It will eat through all of your shield and it will combo you to death. I would recommend getting Super Armor Omega to Beast so that you can quickly just get onto the Beast and then get out of there. So all the attacks, these attacks are very, very easy to punish. As soon as this guy starts landing when he throws out the ice attack, throw out your Beast Legion, go for the Howl, then start buffing up, get whatever attacks you can, and try to position yourself so that you're attacking him from either the side or behind. Ideally from behind, I couldn't because he's backed up against the wall. If you get him from behind, he will be distracted with someone in front of him, meaning you can just get as many backstabs as you can. Remember, you need to get as much damage as possible and whittle him down. The whole purpose of this particular fight is just to whittle down his health so that he has a pretty, marginal sliver of his health. I'm saying maybe 10% of his HP, maybe a little bit less than that if you can, just to stay safe, and I'll talk about that later. Okay, so this attack, it is an upgrade of the typical black hole. Untarget him immediately, because if he decides to teleport, that's going to throw off your controls, and you might end up speeding into the black hole, and no one wants to do that. Otherwise though, you kind of want to stay at a long range so that you can start fishing for some slows and howls when he does his flurry, because if you attack him from a distance with the flurry, sure, if you hit the Legion you might take a little bit of damage, but it's better than taking a full combo anyway, and it's just a really good way of kind of punishing anytime this happens and then following up with any of your combos. The attack too, where it creates a giant explosion, is also pretty good, but one of the problems about this boss is that sometimes he might go straight into a second attack, and that means that you'll waste your howl. If you want to second guess yourself, honestly, by all means, it's better that you second guess yourself rather than waste your howl and need to do another one. But as you can see over here though, you can also just catch him mid-flurry rush and then just use that instead. Very, very good stuff. Of course, put out the blue shield. See, like, this blue shield gave me a second chance. This could have been really bad if I didn't have the blue shield and the flurry rush, or the hit rush, didn't push him back, because that would have actually been a kill. Alright, so again, kind of stick around with Beast, keep an eye on your cooldowns. Howl is the most important cooldown for this entire battle anyway, so yeah, just keep that in mind. But just be mindful of dodging the attacks. This attack where he summons all the elements, the best way to punish it is just wait for him to summon the ice, then as soon as he falls, throw him out, see what he's going to do next. If he goes for a flurry, go immediately for a howl, but if you see him jump, don't bother, the howl is not going to land. Otherwise though, mind your positioning, make sure that you're always from behind, make sure that the hit rusher is always attacking him from in front, and yeah, so you see here, I actually have some of that blue shield, so that I can continue trading the hits. This is why blue shield is so good, you can just always be in a scenario where you can trade hits, even with a giant explosion coming your way. Okay, so I'm trying to go for the finishing blow here. So the moment I see an opportunity to get the Howl, I'm gonna start throwing on all my buffs and then go for the Legion Fusion. This is incredibly important. I actually panicked and made a mistake here. I went for the Axe when I should have gone for Sword for the Power Charge. You want to have Speed Star, Power Charge, and Spicy Cobra before transforming, and also you want to switch over to your highest damage dealer, which in my case is the Axe, because that is going to affect the damage that you do. Be very, very careful of when you use this. Only do this when you know you're going to win, because there's so much stun when this is done that you're going to end up being very, very vulnerable, and that's probably going to be a one-shot for you too. It's not exactly game-breaking, but it's a very powerful tool and very, very useful for just making sure you can close out the damage, and that's exactly what you see here. Don't be afraid to take longer. Honestly, getting an S+ isn't all that difficult when it comes to timing. So yeah, go nuts, go practice, and enjoy the Super Boss. Go nuts. Anyways guys, that pretty much about does it for the Aether Superboss fight. Very, very tricky, very, very annoying, but to be honest though, if you guys were able to make it this far, then you have basically all the tools and knowledge you need. Honestly, what it really comes down to is just practice, being more and more familiar with the moveset that the boss has. But once you beat it though, you have essentially beaten the greatest challenge of Astral Chain, and a really, real fantastic way to cap things off. Aether is an insanely, insanely difficult fight, but I'm glad that he even exists in the game, because it just goes to show that all the experiences that you've had doing all of these cases, we're building up to this very moment. Everything you've learned is going to get applied here, and that's what makes that fight so awesome. Anyways, guys, thank you very much for watching. There's still plenty we're going to look at. For those guys that haven't even made it this far to any of, the content that we've looked at so far, there's going to be a couple of, olive cases that you guys might be having trouble with, and that's exactly what I'm planning on working on in the coming weeks. Aether, really fun boss, really awesome boss. My only complaint is that you don't get any special reward from beating him, except just for the Legionis license, which is just kind of a non-item, as it were, and then after that you just get empty cans as a reward. Would have been nice if they gave you like a really powerful ability code or something, but honestly what it boils down to is familiarity, building up your X-Baton to do as much damage as they can, and your, the Legionis, to make sure that you can always be capped up with that energy that is very important. Believe me, there's a huge difference between the second last ranking and the final ranking for the Legionis, and it makes a huge difference, and it'll definitely make things a lot less frustrating for you. Anyways, guys, thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you guys for more Astral Chain soon, very soon. Take care, everyone.